So hello folks, I'm Piggy, and this bad boy hasn't got very much power, but this is Piggy Power, and occasionally we do a few guides just on some of the basics of vehicle maintenance and repairs. So today I'm going to do a basic guide on the simplest way to replace a CV boot, a constant velocity joint. Technically, if you're really going to be technically minded, they're not technically called that, blah blah blah. Let's just stick to what we know. It's a CV boot. These are on the drive shaft and they retain all the grease in the joint so that your joint doesn't, well, effectively explode. Now, they are my most hated job. I hate doing CV boots, as a lot of other people do. So thankfully, these guys, these clever guys that make car parts, come up with a stretch boot and this cone. Now the kits aren't expensive. I think this was about 15 quid and this came with the cone and the kit and the grease and a new wheel nut. Hub nut. So they're not expensive. It's a repair you can do with basic tools. I'm not going to show you the tools you require for this specific vehicle, because the way I'm going to show you, you can do this on any vehicle essentially with front wheel drive and even rear wheel drive. It's just about getting access to the boot. I don't recommend the split ones that you have to glue. They really don't last. You could alternatively obviously replace the whole drive shaft at a greater expense, and you would also lose gear oil. We're going to try and avoid doing that today. So go make yourself a brew, watch this guide, and then go and get yourself greasy and save yourself some money. Okay, now the most obvious first step you want to do is to loosen the wheel nuts, raise the vehicle and get the wheel off. However, there's an essential part to the job. Pull that cover off. You have a hub nut. Now some are accessible with the wheel in place, which like this one is ideal. If it's not, don't panic. You take the wheel off and you get someone inside to put their foot on the brake so you can undo the hub nut without having to use an impact wrench or an air gun, etc. that you might not have. Like basically I don't work with. I try and work with things that you could at home. In this case, the vehicle's on the floor, which is ideal. We will remove this split pin with some pliers and then we can get a socket on there and undo that before we raise the vehicle, because once the vehicle's in the air, the wheel's off. There is a couple of other tricks to it. You could put a screwdriver in the vents for your disc, and then as you rotate that would jam that, but you could potentially snap your screwdriver. It's not the most ideal method. So person inside with a foot brake, or this method, which we can do because we've got access to the hub nut, so that's ideal. So just a pair of pliers. Not all hub nuts have split pins on them. Some of them will just be so tight you won't believe it. They are much tighter than your wheel nuts, so you're going to need some decent bar to undo them with. A breaker bar, as some might call it, or a decent wheel brace anyway. Just tease this out. If you can, replace the split pin. Your kit might come with one. And then we need to find the right size socket for this bad boy there. Okay, so you've got your big hub nut socket, whatever it might be, sometimes 27, 30, 32, 36, 35. A decent enough bar. This one isn't very tight, I wouldn't think. There we go. And she's loose. That's all we need for now to worry about. Let's just loosen up the wheel nuts and then we will raise the vehicle and put it somewhere safe. Now on initial inspection it's not that obvious, but without seeing, I mean you can see obviously that it's perished, but can you see all this grease here that's built up? It's flicked out of the joint. Now if we spin the joint and the hub round, there it is. You see that split? So as that's spinning round as you're driving along, that's flicking out all the grease. So this is why I really hate these jobs. You always get mucky. Essentially you want to get this drive shaft out. Now it's not quite as simple as removing the hub nut and the shaft coming out, because obviously that would be, well, it just doesn't work geometrically. So there's a few options. Now you could remove the nuts at the top, which remove the hub from the strut. You might find yourself some headaches there. The simplest method, the most common method, is to track rod end removal and bottom joint removal. Now we're going to just go starting off with the bottom ball joint removal. Now this is the joint that sits at the bottom of the hub and allows the hub to swivel. Keeps it in contact with the lower arm, which is down there. So I would always start with that, because sometimes you've got enough leverage then to move the hub out the way, and then you can pull the shaft down, which you'll see in a second hopefully. Now if the brake line goes off this direction, sometimes you have to remove the brake caliper, or remove the trap rod end nut off here, take the trap rod end off, and move it out this direction. But we're going to aim for removing the bottom ball joint and pulling it away this direction. That's the plan with this one. Now no matter what vehicle it is, this is a very basic vehicle. That's all you've got to do, is make enough leverage to be able to pull the shaft and the splines out of the hub so you can get the boot without pulling the shaft, importantly, out of the gearbox. If you do that, you're going to start losing gear oil, and you could even nick your shaft seal and you'll be giving yourself a gearbox leak. So make sure you don't do that. So bottom ball joints come in a number of different designs. Sometimes they're a pinch design where there's a bolt that goes across that way. You just have to remove that bolt and you get a chisel or some sort into the split, open it up and lever this part down. On this ball joint, as you can probably just about see, I'll try and give you some more light so that you can see. There we go. There's a split pin and a nut on top. So you want to give that a bit of a brush off, WD-40, pull the split pin out and undo the nut. You're going to have to also use a spanner for that. If the whole joint starts spinning, put a jack underneath the arm, just there, to put pressure on the joint while you take the nut off. And then a big bar across the arm, as you'll see in a second in the video, and that will lever this down. So let's do that now. Still with me? Well done. It can be an absolute fiddle sometimes to just do what you've just seen. So don't think you're on your own if you're having a fiddle as well. Excuse the expression. Some ball joints are much more simple than this. They just have a nylon nut, so they have no stupid split pin, which now snapped off because it's about 1 billion years old. So I'm going to have to knock that pin out later, but hopefully you won't have that bother. You can either do that or you can drill it out now. Now, as you can notice, because the CV joint's in the way, I can't quite get the nut off. That's fine, we'll get that off in a second. Now you can lever down from here. You also use the shock treatment. So you want to hit here with the hammer. Don't hit the threads, hit about here with the hammer, nice and hard. And it'll hopefully just shock the joint apart. You can use the same for the trap rod end joints. That's a common one where people are smashing the threads out and they've ruined it. Just hit the actual part of the hub and that shocks the joint apart. So, cover your ears. Here comes the noise. Looks like we're going to have to get a big old lever on that baby. There we go. The final smack now. If at all possible, get that nut back on the thread just to protect it. Show you properly now. So okay, that's the bottom ball joint off, and whichever method you've used. Sometimes the ball joint is part of the hub and points down, so you remove the nut there. Sometimes it's just a pinch bolt, so there'll be a split in the hub there, and you just put a splitter in there or a lever bar, pull it apart, drop the hub down, the arm down, sorry. There we go, finally the camera's adjusted. So, basically, we're ready to pull this thing apart. So what you've got to do now, ideally with a copper hammer, which looks like that, a hide hammer, which is the other end, or use a piece of wood. You need to just hit the shaft through the hub, like that. Now keep pressure on the shaft, going that direction. Turn the steering round like that. That gives you more leverage, so you turn the steering there full lock to the right, on the left hand side, or full lock to the left on the right hand side. And we can pull the hub away. As I say, keep the pressure on that direction. Now, the hub kind of get in your way. Now, if you have a ramp or something, put a piece of rope around the hub and pull it away from out your way. That's not a bad idea. So just use these clips aren't going to be used again. So just use some side cutters, some pliers, whatever you've got to hand. Never pull this way because you're likely to pull the drive shaft apart, and we don't want that. It can be pretty brutal at this point. You're not saving any of these parts. these clips or this boot. I would say by the way this clip is, it's been replaced before. And maybe my prediction is that that's what's split down there. Perhaps it's whoever did this before who used a split boot glued down the middle. As you can see, it's coming down the split there. So we're just going to work around the camera a bit here so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to take the other clip off. So that's what we've got to do, just take 2 clips off. And then the ideal tool for taking the boot off is just a little blade of some sort. You could cut it off, I suppose. But be paired with some rag and a bin because it's full of lovely smelly grease. Okay, so now that's split all the way through. Just lift your shaft up, pull the boot off like that. There we go. That's the old one off. Now, you want to be clearing off as much of this old grease as possible. What you'd have to do now is either take the shaft off, or you'd knock this joint off. Now sometimes there's a clip in there, and you can spend ages trying to knock the shaft off, damage the shaft, damage the joint, trying to get that off. So you'd knock that off, put the new boot on, knock it back on. But cone. So you put the cone like that. It's a bit overkill for this job. You grease the cone. We're going to use some WD-40. And then you notice the boot, the new stretch boots, they're universal. They've got like a number of places where you can slice them depending on the size of the joint. So clearly that is bigger than that. So it will be the next one down, I expect. Pretty simple, can you see that? So we'll probably slice that top one off with the blade. Let's do that now. Alright, so that's our boot trimmed down now. I think that's going to be a better fit, I believe. You might need to go down one more piece. If we find that once you've got it on, we'll have to do that. What you now need to do is turn the boot inside out. Like that. Looks a bit weird, I know. So you got something like that. Because obviously once you slide it over, then you flick it over itself. Okay, what I would recommend, you notice the cone is a little bit smaller now. I've cut it down to size. They do come for super size, so you might need it if you're using a really big cone, but you don't need it any more than necessary than to pop the cone on the actual shaft, so that's going to be fine for me. You're also going to need to get messy at this point, so we're going to put some of the grease on there. I find it's a bit better than using something like WD-40, only because the sort of WD-40 it's really easy to slide it off, it dries out a little bit. And for a few other reasons. I've just found that although it's a bit messy, using just a little bit of the grease, and they do seem to provide 2 packs of grease than the usual one with the cone kit, so obviously they're expecting you to stick some on the cone, which is quite a porous material, so it kind of soaks up whatever you're sticking on it. Now you need your hands pretty dry and clean so that you're not sliding on the boot. You want the boot to slide, not your hands. So let's get the boot somewhere close. Pop the cone over. Get yourself comfortable, and this is the tricky bit. You need to twist and push at the same time. See that? There we go. And she's on. The cone's got a bit stuck. There we go. It's out. And then what you do is get really messy. Now you need to flip the cone the other way around, which has now got all the grease on the outside of it. Joy of joys. So I'm going to take one more rib off this. You don't want it a loose fit. You need it to be a tight fit. So So you get your little grease here, packets I suppose you'd call them, and what you want to do is just pull this back and try and fill the joint as best you can with the grease. Now the grease is all inside, just get that moving in your new joint, just whittle your joint round, gets the grease in there, very nice. And then, obviously if you're using a brand new shaft you don't need to do this. If you're using a brand new CV boot joint, you'd need to definitely squeeze all the grease inside the joint, but this has still got some in it, so just an extra packet. Right, now as you notice it's just slipping on and off, so you're going to have to try and clean up as best the lip so that it's got something to grip to, rather than it's slipping off as soon as you let go. So let's try that again. Man, this is greasy. There we go. So, wants to stay on that lip, please. Thank you. So, your little clip. And it's got this number of teeth on it, so you're going to push on. Okay, now you squeeze it round as far as you think you can squeeze it by hand, basically. Going to try and go around one more clip, so it's got a bunch of teeth and the little gaps you can see. Right. So you need to pinch that up. So you could use a standard pair of pliers, but a set of proper pinch pliers would be a better idea, or like that. Okay, so I'll get them in place, make sure the teeth are gripped, and hopefully squeeze her up, like so. Now I'm going to put the other clip round it, on the large end. You see all those little holes, a bit clearer on the large clip. So you're going to squeeze that clip round as far as you can by hand until those teeth grab the clip. And if you think you can make another tooth hole, persevere if you can. Right, I think that's as far as I'm going to get. So bring the tool in, squeeze that raised section together, and that pulls the clip tight. Like so. And all that remains is to put it all back together again. I would Google to make sure that your shaft nut is set to the right torque setting. If you're not sure, well, do it really tight. And I'm going to put the whole thing back together again. Yay! Well done, you just did a CV boo. You're amazing! Well done for doing your CV boot. I hope this guide helps. Give it a thumbs up if it did help. Please comment rather than giving it a thumbs down as to why you didn't like the video, and then I can make subsequent videos much better. So please subscribe if you're not already. There's loads of other videos, some for your entertainment and your excitement, and others just to help you maintain your vehicle. I hope that my enthusiasm for fixing cars rubs off on you just a little bit. Piggy out.